Good evening, everybody. We're going to get started. Thank you and welcome to the regular monthly meeting of the Mayor and Council being held in Borough Hall Monday, June 12, 2023, starting at 6:36 p.m. Missy, could you please read the roll?
Mayor Nunziato.
Here.
Councilman Coakley.
Here.
Councilman McGowan.
Present.
Councilman Begg Roberson.
Here.
Councilman Guzman.
Here.
Councilman Del Ricon.
Here.
Councilwoman Quattrone.
Here.
Thank you. If you're willing and able, could you please stand for the salute to the flag? Thank you, everyone. Missy, could you please read the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act?
In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Law, Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, notice of this meeting was transmitted to the Record and Herald News and filed with the Borough Clerk on December 21st, 2022, and is posted on the bulletin board outside Borough Hall.
Thank you. Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. Briefly, the Bergen County resurfacing of Union Avenue is complete. We have one or two ramps that need to be installed that are opposite the high school, and we're going to proceed with them. We got permission to put them in, and they'll be done by the end of the summer because they were like the missing link across Union Ave. The current road program is done in its totality with the wrap-up on Riverside Terrace, where we had a chronic, like a spring, like water spring area, and that's now all dried out. But with this wet weather, dry weather, it makes, we're going to test it out in the next couple of days when it starts to get wet again. We put in for Bergen County open space applications. We're putting in for the NJDOT next round of municipal grants. And we are now doing the bathroom at Tamblin. The ADA ramp on the north side of Borough Hall just needs a door. That's being fabricated now, and when the door is fabricated, they'll cut the door in and finish that off. That should go relatively quickly, and hoping that's done by the end of the month. We had two sewer emergencies, one on Stuyvesant over by Route 3, and another in front of the St. Mary's Gym. And that was taken care of within the day they were discovered, and we're done. The one by St. Mary's was done on the overnight, just to keep chaos to a minimum, and that's all done. And we're wrapped up with Tamlin. The basketball court was touched up, the cracks were sealed, and we hope to get as much out of that as possible, but it is under active use right now. And I believe that's where we are, Mayor, in our capital projects.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions from the council? Seeing none, thank you, Brian. We're going to move on to the changes to the proposed agenda.
On page 2, under consent, finance will be adding item D, a second payment of bills. On page 3, under finance, we'll be adding item F, resolution number 146, authorizing the borough to participate in the Union County Cooperative Pricing Agreement. Also, it's been requested that we put all of the native redevelopment items on, right after the hearing of citizens. So that will be from page 2, resolution number 144, designating native development urban renewal as a redeveloper of 15 Sylvan Way and 5 Edric Terrace. That'll be after the hearing of citizens, followed by the ordinance on first read, adopting the amendments to the theater district, followed by the ordinance on second read, approving the application for the execution of the financial agreement. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else from the council? Seeing none, I'd ask for a roll call or a motion.
Motion?
Motion by Council President. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Coakley. Any questions or comments by the council? Seeing none, may I have a roll call?
Councilman Coakley?
Yes.
Councilman McGowan?
Yes.
Councilman Begg Roberson?
Yes.
Councilman Guzman?
Yes.
Councilwoman Delroy Cohen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Quattrone?
Yes.
I now ask for the Williams Center redevelopment presentation. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. So yes, tonight, we thought it'd be a good idea at this point to discuss the three actual items on tonight's agenda, and thank you for everyone for moving it up to beginning of this meeting. So what we talk about now is fresh in everyone's mind, and we can, act accordingly. So the first thing tonight, we have the redevelopers agreement, Resolution 144, authorizing the redevelopers agreement with Native Development Urban Renewal. And basically, this document is explaining what the project is and the requirements thereof. In addition to myself tonight, I have our redevelopment attorney, Kevin McManaman, and the borough's financial advisor, NW Financial, Dan Banker, to address these issues tonight and to explain to you and to those in the room and those at home, some of the thought process behind recommending their approval. In addition, we have the developer here, Chuck Olivo, who is not really here to make a presentation, but if something specific regarding a project is here or questioned, he'll be able to answer on his development team's behalf. So basically, the redevelopers agreement is identifying what this project is. It has already been before the planning board. It's allowing for a 7-story structure, including 80 residential units, 68 market rate, 12 affordable on-site. Also calls for the rehabilitation and preservation of the Black Box Theater, the cinema, and the Williams Center, the main theater. Also includes various site improvements. Developer agrees to operate and maintain the Williams Center Theater. It also includes a lease agreement for the Ettrick Terrace lot for parking, which is currently a borough lot. What will happen there is the developer has agreed to invest approximately $1.5 million to renovate and expand the Ettrick Terrace lot, including repaving, striping, increasing the parking from its current state of 47 spaces to 124 parking spaces. This will include 40 stackable parking structure, 40 spaces with the ability to go stackable on top of each other for the 80 spaces. Those 80 spaces will be dedicated to the redevelopment project, the residential project, 1 space per unit. Along the perimeter will be an additional 44 surface level parking spaces. They will remain with the borough. Current permit holders will have rights to those spaces upon completion of the renovation and rehabilitation of that lot. In addition to that, the developer will be paying a monthly permit fee of $25 per parking space for the 40 spaces that the structure will be occupying. That'll go on for a 20-year lease and with an option for a 10-year renewal after that. And then I'll allow the other professionals to kind of fill in the blanks of what I've may have missed on that project, on that aspect of the resolution. The second thing tonight is the ordinance introducing amendments to the redevelopment plan. This is referring the couple changes that have been recommended back to the planning board for approval. Basically, it's just allowing for a rooftop restaurant amenity and also to comply with the change in the parking management structure that's being identified within the redevelopment plan, within the redevelopers agreement. And the third document tonight is the second read on the financial agreement, also known as the pilot agreement for the developer. I will allow our financial advisor to kind of go over the numbers and the rationale for this recommendation. But it's it's a fair agreement for both parties. The action taken is to, in response to the community wishes to make this a viable project, keep the theater. We've worked with the developer long and hard in trying to make this happen, and we think the action being requested tonight is a good start to making that happen. I will now refer to our redevelopment attorney, Kevin McManaman, to maybe expand upon some of the things I may have missed. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Bob. Good evening, everybody. Kevin McManaman, Scotland and Bauman. Just to expand a little bit on the last point that Bob was making, not that he missed it, but I'm just going to expand on it a little bit. I think it's worth remembering a little bit of the history here. The county owned and operated that theater for a long time, and a couple years ago, the county determined that it wasn't going to do that anymore, and it was poised to auction off the site, which could potentially have led to it going to a developer who might not continue the operation of the theater. The continuation of the operation of the theater was a very important issue to the mayor and the council and to many residents of the borough. So the borough team crafted a plan that called for the borough to acquire the property from the county for $1, and the borough to, in turn, convey the property to another developer also for $1. But that developer had to commit to maintaining the theater, in addition to the other project components that Bob just talked about. So that's what happened really over the last couple of years, is we spent that time pushing and pulling on all the different terms, trying to come up with a plan that worked for everybody. Many of you may remember that we were prepared to come before council last fall and ask the council to approve the documents that we're asking the council to approve tonight. The council, however, was very concerned about the parking plan that was included as part of that plan. So we took a breath, re-engaged with the developer, the native, and their team, and we're back before you tonight with a parking plan that's different and asking you to consider it, especially in that historical context that Bob mentioned and I expanded on just a moment ago. I'd like to address a couple of the issues that I think have generated a few questions over the last week or so in particular. The use of the property as a theater purpose, as I mentioned, was so important that when the county conveyed it to the borough, the deed under which the county conveyed the property to the borough contained a reverter clause. If the borough were to stop using it for a public purpose, title would revert back to the borough. That reverter provision carried through in the deed from the borough to native. So it must use the property for a public purpose. The borough also then more specifically included a provision in the deed, and that same provision appears in the form of an affirmative covenant in the redevelopment agreement between the borough and native that requires native to affirmatively maintain the site as the theater use. If it fails to do that for a period of time, then it will owe the borough $1 million. In addition to that, if native sells the property before it finishes construction of the theater, because it was conveyed to native for this nominal amount, if it sells the property for more than $1,000, it will have to share in the proceeds of the sale with the borough. And those provisions are spelled out both in the deed, and therefore they run with the land, and in the redevelopment agreement. The purpose of all those provisions, and native was willing to agree to them, is to help incentivize native to maintain this provision that, as I said, is so important to the borough that it sort of crafted this whole deal. So those provisions all appear in the deed and run with the land. They appear in the redevelopment agreement that native has agreed to. A couple of other pretty specific, deeper in the weeds kind of questions, a construction schedule. It was questioned whether there was a construction schedule here. The financial agreement, section 2.4, provides that the urban renewal entity will commence and complete construction of the project in accordance with the redevelopment agreement terms. The redevelopment agreement includes a project schedule as an exhibit to it that calls for the commencement and the completion of the project in accordance with certain standards. So we're not looking to monitor every single day of the work they do, but we want to know when they're going to start, and we want to know when they plan to finish relative to when they start. So that project schedule is in the agreement with the redeveloper. And lastly, it was questioned whether the borough's team had the information that it needed in order to properly evaluate the pilot ask, because the statute, the long-term tax exemption law, calls for an application to be submitted, and it calls for that application to include certain specific financial information. All of that information was contained in the long-term tax exemption application that Native submitted to the borough, complies with the statutory requirements, and that is what sort of set the table for Dan and his team at NW Financial to review the pilot ask that Native initially made of the borough. And as you can tell from the presentation, you will learn from the presentation, Native originally made an ask. Our team collectively with the borough pushed back on that, and we now crafted a pilot structure that we believe is fair and worthy of your consideration, and Dan's going to get into that now. Happy to answer any other questions you may have when, as, and if it comes up.
Thank you, Kevin. Before you sit, Kevin, does anybody from the council have anything they want to ask Kevin?
I just have, sorry, Mayor, I just have one question, Kevin. With regards to the $1 million, I just want to make sure my understanding is correct of reading the document. With regards to the $1 million that the developer will owe the borough should they fail to create a theater, my understanding is that $1 million is a fluid number, meaning that it would be adjusted for inflation.
It's not adjusted for inflation.
Is it
There was
not?
a
Okay.
prior version of the deal. That was one of the terms that we had bandied about earlier on, but it's not adjusted
Okay,
for inflation.
so it's $1 million.
Yeah,
Okay.
there was a provision in an earlier version of the documents that's come out.
Okay,
And
thank you.
in the redevelopment agreement section where you see that, it says it's not adjusted for inflation.
Got it, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm glad I asked.
Yes.
Anybody else from the council?
I had concerns, and I had voiced them a few times about the stackable parking. And I guess I'm curious, are there any options that are, I know it was for a financial reason, but are there any other options apart from stackable parking?
Yes, they're just very expensive. The original proposal from Native called for them to construct a parking garage on Ettrick Terrace. That would have been so expensive that they were asking the borough to issue bonds in the amount of, I think, $10 million to help finance that parking solution. We considered whether it was sufficient. The parking plan that we were coming back before council for last fall called for the redeveloper to only use the existing spaces at Ettrick and also then use the capacity that we believe exists in the KIP garage, but that I think the borough is concerned is whether it exists enough in a real usable way. And as a result, we went back to the drawing board with Native, and they came up with this plan to take the sort of existing two-dimensional space on the Ettrick lot, repave it, expand it a little bit, restripe it, and then go vertical with stackers, which is something you see in places where you don't have a lot more two-dimensional space, and it's super expensive to either go up or down.
Yeah, I was involved in those discussions. I think I was just wondering if, so basically the stackable option is the cheapest option.
It's the cheapest option that also satisfies the requirement to actually provide the parking. I think, yeah. I say it that way because, as I say, I mean, there may be capacity in the KIP garage, which would not trigger the need to create any additional parking than that exists as it stands today. But we think it would cause a lot of people a lot of agita about whether there's sufficient parking there. So we think this solves that problem.
Hi, thank you for your presentation.
You're welcome.
I have a question. You said the deed contains a provision that requires a public purpose or it reverts to the borough.
That's right.
Now, if Native sells the building, does the new owner have to abide by that provision in the deed?
Yes. So the public purpose in the county to borough leg of the transaction, the county simply said it has to be a public purpose. In the borough to Native leg of the transaction, we specified that redevelopment is in and of itself a public purpose. The United States Supreme Court has determined that redevelopment is a public purpose. We then further specified that not just general redevelopment, but the theater itself is, and for that, that's the reason why we included that liquidated damages provision, specifically requiring not just a generic public purpose, but specifically the theater itself. So somebody taking the property, let's say Native builds it and sells it to somebody sometime in the future, that covenant will run with the land to that new buyer, and they will have to maintain the theater.
Okay, that
Does
sounds
that
good.
answer your question?
Yes. One more follow-up. So if either Native or the owner do not, like, destroy the theater or cannot save it, preserve it, or turn it into any kind of other theater, then there's a penalty provision. But does it also revert to the borough in addition to that?
Well, it could.
I don't
I
understand.
mean,
I'm confused about how that works.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because the reality is that really neither the borough nor the county want the property back, right? We want it to be the theater. And I think whether that reverter provision is actually activated by either the borough or the county, I think the borough or the county would probably address when, as and if that time comes. Unquestionably, that $1 million payment is due, but I think it really would have to abide the event and see what happens and see what's the reason for the stoppage of it, whether it's Native or a successor of theirs, what's the market look like at the time, what's the general climate. That obligation is intended to run in perpetuity. So it's really difficult to say here in 2023 what might actually happen if it's 10 years from now, 30 years from now, or so on.
Okay, so it leaves it as an option.
Well, yeah, I mean, in my view, it's an option. It's automatic in the document, but I think my own personal view is if 10 years from now there's some kind of default in that and it's either Native or a successor stops operating the theater, I don't know if the then administration and council and residents of the borough want the borough to have that back rather than want the theater to operate. And maybe there's a solution that whoever is in place at the time can come up with that doesn't necessarily call for the property coming back to the borough. So I think of it as really like a practical flexibility, but legally, it's in the document.
Okay, thank you
make
very much.
sense?
Yes, thanks.
Thanks, Kev.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and Borough residents. My name is Daniel Banker, and I work with NW Financial Group. I prepared some slides tonight to go over some specifics on the financials of this project. Bob, if you can go to slide 3 to start.
First off, this is the most I've heard you ever speak, Dan, so.
Appreciate that, Mayor. So it might be small for some of you guys, so I'll try to explain as much as possible here. So slide 3 is showing the proposed unit mix. As stated earlier, the proposed project will include 80 units, of which 15% are affordable, the equivalent of 12 units. Those affordable units will be restricted to low and moderate income households based on the Uniform Housing Affordability Controls. The other 68 market rate units are primarily studio and 1-bedrooms, along with 9 2-bedroom units. There will also be a retail component of just over 5,800 square feet, and of course, the theater as well. You go to the next slide, please, Bob. So the estimated project cost is going to be just under $31 million. Of that, about 25% will be coming from developer equity, and the rest coming from construction and permanent financing. In that $31 million number includes approximately $5.4 million in theater renovations, as well as the $1.5 million in the upgrade to the Ettrick Terrace parking lot. Next slide, please, Bob. So originally, the developer requested a 30-year pilot at 10% of annual gross revenue. After looking at the financials and looking at the developer returns, we negotiated to a 30-year pilot that started at 10% of annual gross revenue for the first 15 years and bumped up to 11% for the final 15 years. In addition, there's a mandatory phase-in of conventional taxes that's part of the long-term tax exemption law. The developers typically request the best-case scenario, and there's minimums and maximums. Those phase-ins start at 0%, go to 20%, 40%, 60%, and 80%. In the best-case scenario, the developer receives 1 year at 80% in year 30. In this case, we negotiated for the final 5 years to be 80%. Next slide, Bob. So before we even consider a pilot scenario, we take a look at the project under a conventional tax scenario to see if the project is financially feasible under conventional taxes. We worked with the tax assessor to determine what conventional taxes would be for a project like this. We submitted the financials that he requested, and it's estimated that the conventional tax number would be approximately $700,000. So on the left, you're looking at a table of what the returns to the developer would be under conventional taxes. Without getting into too specifics, there are several metrics that we use to determine developer returns and financial feasibility. Internal rate of return, yield on cost, net project value, and debt service coverage ratio. You'll see there's a red number there. That's a negative $3.2 million. What that's representing is under conventional taxes, the project value would be worth $3.2 million less than the project would cost. In addition, the rates of return that I spoke to are below the minimum thresholds. Typically, an IRR market return is between 10 and 14%. Under conventional taxes, they're just over 2%. And at yield on cost, typical market returns are between 6 and 7%. And here under conventional taxes, you're below 5%. The last metric is debt service coverage ratio. That is a metric that's used by lenders to determine the available cash to pay off debt service, to pay off their loan. In this market today, banks are typically not lending to below 1.2 coverage. And under conventional taxes, you are below 1. So we were able to conclude that this project is not financially feasible under conventional taxes. So that brings us to the pilot. With reducing the tax burden, it increases the project value, and you'll still see that the returns to the developer are still at the low end, if not below the minimum thresholds. Typically, we see higher returns there. And you'll also see that the debt service coverage ratio is just getting to that 1.2. So we feel that this pilot is appropriate, and it will allow the project to move forward. Next slide, Bob. Okay, so I know there's a lot of numbers here. This is a projection of the gross pilot over the 30-year term and the borough's share of that pilot. And it's actually, for illustrative purposes only, we've also shown the conventional tax amount over the 30-year span and what the borough share would be. Again, that's kind of a fairy tale in the sense that we don't believe that this project would be built under conventional taxes. But if it was, because the borough share is roughly 31%, let me just, can't really see those numbers either, so. So under the pilot over the 30-year term, the borough share is projected to be $14.9 million. Under conventional taxes, the borough share would be $8.8 million. So under the pilot, the borough is receiving just over $6 million more. Next slide, Bob. So looks like the same slide, but it's actually not. This is showing the existing tax revenue generated by the site and the borough share versus that same number of the pilot. Right now, the current taxes on the site are just below $71,000, of which the borough receives $22,000. Under the pilot, the borough share will be $322,000 a year and increasing as rent growth and as the pilot percentage increases. So over the 30-year term, the pilot will generate an additional $14 million compared to today. Next slide, please. Okay, so the final part of our analysis is the fiscal impact analysis. We need to determine the projected number of residents and school children that will be generated by this project. The Rutgers University conducted a study back in 2006, I believe, originally, called Who Lives in New Jersey Housing? And that study used or created demographic multipliers to project number of residents and school children based on different factors of unit type, rental versus condo, number of units in the building, et cetera. That study was updated in 2018 to account for new construction buildings. New construction buildings typically are more efficient unit sized, so those multipliers were updated. And for purposes of our analysis, we used the updated multipliers. Using those multipliers, it's projected that 142 new residents will be generated and 6 new public school children will be generated. Just sticking on this slide, once we've identified the projected number of residents and school children, we then need to apply a cost per resident and per school child. So the Division of Local Government Services has a pilot forecasting model that's used, and they take the budget information for each municipality and determines a per resident cost. For this municipality, that number is $380 per resident. So you'll see that when you apply that to the 142 residents, you get a total cost of $54,000. On the school side, we use the total classroom instruction number from the Board of Education budget, which is approximately $10,000, and we applied the 90%, which is funded from local sources. So for this analysis, we used $9,000 roughly per student, which gets you to $54,000 for the student side, for total new costs of $108,000. And then the last slide, please. So this final slide is to show whether or not this project will result in a positive net benefit. When accounting for the new resident costs and new school children costs in comparison to the revenue generated by the pilot, the net benefit at stabilization will still be $220,000. And over the 30-year term, the net benefit will be just under $11 million. And now I will take any questions.
Anybody from the council have any questions? Seeing none, then could you make sure that the borough clerk gets a copy of that for the public?
Sure, absolutely, thank you.
All right, thanks, Dan. We're going to now open it up to the public for the hearing of citizens. Anyone from the public wishing to speak, please step up to the microphone. State your name, address, keep your comments to 5 minutes or less, please. Also, note, in lieu of giving your address on the record, you have the option of writing your name in the book. That is...
Good.
Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm David Grissetti, 1 Orient Way, Unit 410, and I'm a member of the board of the Rutherford Pride Alliance, and I'm here with Sarah Orlowitz, and we are here representing the Pride Alliance, the Rutherford Arts Council, and the committee that organized the Rutherford Pride Festival 2 weekends ago. And we're here to just say thank you to the borough for all of the support that the mayor and council provided, the Department of Public Works, the police, Bob Koleski, Kim Bogosian specifically as well. It's a team effort, and we had another great, successful festival, and so I think it's good for the town, and so we couldn't do it without you. So we just want to say thank you, and we look forward to another successful one next year.
Thank you very
Thank
much. We
you.
really appreciate the compliments. Hi, Mr. Tomaso, how are you?
Hi. My name is Lois DiTomaso. I live at 180 Mountain Way. I just wanted to talk one more time about the noise created by the jets using runway 6 at Teterboro. There has been no change really in the time that we've been trying to effect a change in the approaches. We started this last October. There was a TANAC meeting then when they installed the noise monitor on Mountain Way. We talked about it again in January, and I came here in February, and you passed the resolution calling on Teterboro to try to develop and improve an offset approach so that the planes would follow Route 17 on that landing pattern to runway 6 rather than flying over everybody's house and over the schools. In April, a letter was sent that Paul Griffo had recommended, was sent to the FAA from TANAC. It was approved by all the TANAC members, asking the FAA to study that or to actually make that change. At the same time, the Teterboro people said they would no longer fly over Rutherford after 11 o'clock at night, but they would use runway 1, which flies over the Meadowlands. Thank you. Well, that's why I'm here, because absolutely nothing has changed. So I don't know what more we can do about it, but I want to call your attention to a story that was in the New York Times today. I don't know that it was in the paper today, but I suspect it will be in the paper tomorrow, probably in their science section. They have a science section every Tuesday that has stories about well-being. This story was talking about the health problems that are generated by too much environmental noise. What they looked at was trains and planes. And they said that any amount of noise over 45 decibels creates a health hazard, leads to death from heart attack, leads to cardiovascular and heart disease, and high blood pressure, among many other things. The planes at Teterboro, measured by their noise monitor on Mountain Way, was 70 decibels. 70 decibels is a lot higher than 45. And the Times said, I'm just going to read this one paragraph from that. The difference of a few decibels might not seem like much, but for every 1 decibel increase, the risk of developing cardiovascular disease climbs by roughly another percentage point, according to a preliminary analysis of more than 100,000 U.S. nurses. And as decibels climb, so do associations with death because of cardiovascular disease and heart attack. So I think it's pretty clear that those planes from Teterboro represent a health hazard to everybody who lives in Rutherford. Everybody. You don't have to live along runway 6. The decibel noise from takeoff, which is a whole different runway, I'm sure it's higher than 45 decibels. So I think we as a community need to do something about it. I also want to point out the environmental dangers from the exhaust from the planes. Those planes fly over when they are landing every 90 seconds. Every 90 seconds they are releasing pollutants over our homes. They are releasing oil. I have had so many complaints from people saying their houses have soot on them from the planes. Other people who have pools say they have an oil film from the planes, things that come from the planes because they're only 500 feet over our houses. So I think that we should see if there's a way to find out if we can do an environmental study. I want the FAA and Teterboro to pay for that because I know it would be expensive. I also think that as the council, perhaps you can enlist the Board of Education in helping with this because those planes fly over Pierpont and Sylvan School. And those kids are out on those playgrounds all day. And they are being bombarded with the fallout and the pollution from those planes as well as the noise. So I'm going to go to the Board of Education meeting and make the same recommendation there. But I'm hoping that you can reach out to them. And I would suggest that, I don't know these people, but maybe you do, as the mayor. I'm thinking that maybe East Rutherford and Lyndhurst also might want to participate. I'm fairly certain East Rutherford might because they have had the same kind of problems and they have other people like me there complaining a lot. So if you could maybe reach out to the neighboring municipalities and maybe as a group, an environmental study could be done, and something has to be done about the health hazards. I don't know if the state would be willing to work on the environment or not, but anyway, that's why I'm here, and I'm hoping that you'll be able to do something to help with this. And please read the article in the New York Times.
Thank you, Ms. DiTomaso. Anybody else from the public wishing to speak?
David Labruno, 423 Stuyvesant Avenue. Thank you for answering some of my questions with the gentleman here this evening. I will say I'll continue to think that we should have a redevelopment ordinance that lays out exactly what's required to be public before the meeting. We get a nice presentation tonight. None of this stuff is available. Last time I asked, it was decisional documents. So, you know, we're getting a little bit better, let's say. We could do better. We could be more transparent. We could allow the public to have time to consider what's going on here. When last we first had the Agnew, then we had a presentation like that that was prepared by the applicant. And then we were able to analyze it and see what was going on. Then we went to the next one on the Parker 2, and we had a thinner document, and we had much worse words than we had tonight. But tonight, we got something, so I guess there's something to be said for that. Going into the documents, yeah, the construction schedule, I would note, just merely says they'll start construction within a year, and then 2 years later, they'll finish. So there's nothing, if that meets the law's requirements, okay, it does. As far as the parking itself, we went from when this project initially started, about 400 spots, got down to 192 with a deck that was to be constructed by the applicant, now down to 80. Well, they'll pay $25 a month for 80 spots for 12 months, which works out to be not too much money, a couple $1,000 a year, or $24,000 a year for 10 years for the parking. When you told us to build a deck, it would cost $65,000 a spot, where the city has its own ordinance for spots that calls for $25,000 for each spot that's not delivered to the public. When some of the documents say, you know, we got to incentivize the people living there to stay in the spots because public spaces are very much required. When we say we dispense with all the spaces for the theater, we dispense with all the spaces that would go with the restaurant, with the stores, with the art studios inside, all of those. Where we run the numbers here, you said how much the applicant, his letter to the mayor about how much he's losing. Those numbers are slightly off because the 3-bedroom size of the affordable housing unit is the same size as a 2-bedroom market unit. So I don't know, even if you just work the numbers, same 3-bedroom size, I would figure the size is what determines the amount of money that goes with the unit. You come up with, you know, about $120,000 less a year than what the applicant had in his letter to the mayor. That's just a few of the things. This $1.5 million to build do the garage works out to $18,000 per spot, where you told us it cost $61 to build one previously. We could go on and on with the things. Liquidated damages. If we don't have why do we have the liquidated damages, I guess? We'll just take the money after the fact. If we go on to the affordable housing, the numbers, right, you say there's going to be 6 children that will be in that building. We had people who ran on that we would take care of our school system. You have three bedrooms.
You're coming up on 5 minutes.
Sure, I'll be back too. 3 bedrooms, which I don't know if affordable housing, you give that to someone with no children, with 1 child, with 2 child, children, with the 2 bedrooms, all of a sudden, the numbers for the school system just throw off all these projections that your gentleman presented us here tonight. You know, there's
You're at
much
5
more.
minutes, sir.
There's much more that goes on,
I
and
understand, but you're at
I'll like
5
to come
minutes.
up again. Thanks.
Anyone else from the public wishing to speak? And by the way, Mr. Wilson, thank you for closing the door.
Frank Wilson, 171 Montrose Ave, Rutherford. I came here for something else, but I was listening to the attorneys talk about this project, and a couple of things struck me. First, when you talked about theater, you didn't say theater and cinema. You said theater. It's 2 different things. There's the theater and there's the cinema also. So when you say this, are you just inferring to the old Williams Theater, or are you also talking about the cinema below it? Next thing is the pilots. I've never been in favor of pilots, but pilots that don't have kids don't affect the school system. But the way your discussion was, you are planning to have kids in this building. Pilots don't go to the school. Pilots go to the municipal. So if you're going to bring kids in, this pilot needs to be sliced up to where we're not hit heavy on our school system that we have to subsidize. Because a pilot goes that way. It doesn't go that way. Okay? $25 parking, that really struck a chord. And Bob, I've talked to you about the $300 that we pay for Park Avenue. It's all we get. We get $10 a day for the stores, for those grids that we got out there. So at $10 a day, I thought was low. At $25 a month, that's less than $1 a day for paying for parking. That parking is $25 a month, what they're saying, correct? This thing that's going up here that we're talking about a $25 a month for that spots, for parking spots, not here, over there. That's less than $1 a day. We really need to take a look at that because the Parkers was $100 a month, and they chose not to pay it, and they parked on Chestnut until I believe you folks got involved and said, hey, you're blocking Chestnut, let's get it back. Well, that's $100 a month. That's $10 a day, and that's $1 a day. We're going the wrong way. We're going this way now for some reason, okay? So I think you really need to take a look at that. Looked at their website, and another concern I have is that in your stable, you own 500 Riverside on the water, which right now is nothing there. It says it's going to get developed. Are we looking at another pilot on 500 Riverside? Because currently you own 92 Park, which I believe has a pilot. You've got 19 Franklin, which you paid $1 for. You've got Jackson and now Riverside. So are we going to another pilot? How many pilots are we going to give away? How many buildings are we going to build that the school system gets overflown? Final thing is, and you're not going to answer me, and I keep bringing it up, according to this is going to be 7 stories. As far as I know, our hook and ladders go up 6. And if you're going to put a rooftop up on top of this thing, and there's a fire, God forbid, or an emergency, I don't know how we're getting up there unless we retrofit. And we can't retrofit because our buildings are old and they're too small. In your plan, do you mention anything about retrofitting our equipment and spending money on the borough to lift up the buildings to get the equipment in there? I didn't hear it. Because there's only 2 choices. You pay for it or we pay for it. So if we're going to put it in, you got to give the borough money to retrofit the hook and ladders and to fit these buildings so they can get in there because they can't get up 7 stories plus nighttime dancing upstairs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Anybody else from the public wishing to speak? And that's right. Hey, Patrick, Dylan, yep, you have to sit here through all of this till we get to you.
Jasmine Gray, 241 Prospect Place. Excuse me. Recently, there's been some questions and concerns, and I'm hoping to get some clarification. There's actually been a lot of discussion. Has there been any meetings or discussions in regards to Rutherford housing migrants? Also, if that's the case, for how many and how long, as well as do we have the means or the resources to accommodate this? Also, how will funding be allocated to support this, and how will this affect Rutherford residents and our infrastructure? That's it.
Thank you, Jasmine. Anybody else, Mr. Zura?
Two short walks today. Adams or 94 Freeland Avenue. Did I understand correctly, that Mayor, that you're going to have the financial people produce that 20 or 30-year payout schedule?
Yeah, we have the document for you.
Oh, okay, okay. Different topic. I have no doubt, actually, that those who tuned into the last council meeting had been struggling to follow the council's Chevron-like misinterpretations of the Shade Tree Commission's plain language membership requirements. The ordinance simply states, or reads, that 5 residents of the Borough of Rutherford, one of whom may be also a member of the Borough of Rutherford's Department of Public Works Shade Tree Division, period. Full stop. No rationally minded person could actually misconstrue all of that to mean that one department member, DPW member, means 6, or that residents of Rutherford would mean non-residents. These DPW members of the commission can't actually serve 2 masters. Their presence has turned the commission into a paper tiger, where statutory independence and autonomy have actually been taken a backseat to following their superintendent's orders. The council has a duty to follow the terms of its own ordinance, and beginning with the what I would think would be an immediate appointment of a new slate of unbiased and unencumbered commissioners committed to the protection and preservation of the borough's trees, its aesthetic appearance, and the health and well-being of its residents. I really should all take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Zura. Anybody else from the public wishing to speak? I'm now going to close it to the public.
How you doing? I'm Patrick Doyle, 216 Darwin Avenue. And the reason I'm not scared to tell anybody my address is because I have Chief Russo and the Rutherford Police Department here to protect our community. And I'd like to thank them for that and to remind all of you that June is PTSD month. 6% of the population in the United States suffers from PTSD at any given time, 5% at any given year. So with this, I'd like to say, with the low-income housing, there's 40,000 homeless veterans thereabouts. You can't get a good number on it. So if some of this low-income housing can take in some of those veterans.
What happens is after the public speaks, then we all respond.
Right, no, I know. And I'd like to thank Madison Stewart for his bravery the other morning. I was right behind them in the convoy. I was going for coffee, and on my way back, they were passing me guys from Lyndhurst, East Rutherford. We're coming down Montrose. There was probably about 6 cars. It looked like they were moving the Pope. So I'd like to commend him on that, and I hope he's feeling well.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Doyle. And Stuart Madison was a great soldier, and also he's a great officer. Anyone else from the public before we move to the council? Seeing none, I'm going to close it to the public and now open up for any council consent. Any council comments. Councilman?
Thank you, Mayor. Misty Tomaso, thank you as always for coming with proposed solutions in addition to your concerns. Be happy to help out and try and corral more residents to get behind us, get some of those signatures on paper, really affect change. It is an election year for several of us, and those of us higher up the ranks. I believe that's the way to go. Those are the conversations I've been having. It does a lot of good to bang on some doors up the chain. So I'd be more than happy to help you out. Mr. Wilson, thank you as always for your concern. I do not believe, and I'd like our borough professionals to speak to the difference between the theater and the cinema. I believe the cinema was a privately rented space within that. It is not part of the actual historical effort of it. But if anyone can clarify that for me, that would be great. As I understand it, the theater owner, or the cinema owner, has since removed the equipment from the venue itself. Is that, Chuck can speak to that, or Kevin? Okay.
I can respond real quick. I don't know if Mr. Olivo has more to add. When I was talking about the theater, and I beg your pardon if I sort of didn't explain this very clearly, I meant it collectively. It's a defined term in the document. It means the cinema, the black box, and the Williams Center Theater proper. So.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate that. And then just some of your numbers, Mr. Wilson. I do believe, is there anyone who can speak to the parking in the Parker One? I was under the impression that was $600 a month, not the $100 a month, which caused several owners to park on the street as opposed to within the building itself. Can anyone speak to or clarify that, Bob? Is that?
If I recall correctly, there was in addition to their lease on the apartment, there was an additional cost for the parking on, I don't know if it was $100 or $150, I don't remember the number. To the point, some people did choose not to engage that additional cost, and they did park on Chestnut. We learned our lesson in Parker 2. We made sure that any parking was included with the lease for the residents there, so it should not be a problem moving forward.
Great, thank you, Bob. Yeah, so we'll get you clarification on that exact number, just as a reference point. The condo that I lived in Union City before moving here, it was $600 a month extra for the dedicated parking spot. So that, to me, in my head, was the kind of industry standard there, but we'll get clarification on that. And that's essentially all I have for this evening. Mr. Zura, if you'd like to discuss the Shade Tree Commission and your concerns there, I'd be more than happy to step aside after this and discuss bullet points. Thank you.
Thank you. Council President?
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. DiTomaso, first of all, there she is. Thank you for continuing this conversation. You know, we have been very supportive of making our statement regarding this. I don't suspect there'll be any challenge to that continuing forward. The data that you share is concerning on a lot of levels, particularly, you know, I think people undervalue environmental studies, quite frankly, when it comes to noise. They just become so accustomed to it. And so thank you for bringing that to our attention again and continuing to be such a champion of this. I really appreciate the fact you continue to come and update us about its progress. And I have no doubt you will continue to have our support. Mr. Wilson? I know he's back there somewhere. Frank, I think if my memory serves right, 201-301 on Route 17 is a 12-story building. I'm pretty sure those are 12-story buildings, and our fire department is able to handle that. And I remember this question coming up when this was at the planning board. And we do have representation. Mr. Dansbeck is a member of the planning board, and I'm hesitant to quote him, but I'm fairly certain he spoke to the borough's ability to be able to handle the number of stories in this project because they have already been in position to address that challenge for 201-301. But I will follow up and then follow up with you just to confirm, but I'm relatively certain that those are 12-story buildings. Mr. Doyle, thank you for recognizing the challenges of PTSD and our veterans who, for some reason, continue to be unsung heroes. It's not acceptable, and I agree with you in your championing of affordable housing and opportunities so that they're not homeless. And very near and dear to my heart, not only for members of the veteran community, but I have the same feeling for those that need affordable housing that have uniquely abled challenges. They too are very marginalized in this community, and so I thank you. I thank you for coming here and just bringing it to the forefront. It needs to be discussed when we're having ideas about development and opportunities for supportive housing and supportive, including our veterans. if I can ask the borough attorneys to address Ms. Gray's questions, I am not aware of any.
I'd like to speak to that first, if that's okay.
Can we have the attorney speak first, if that's okay with you, Mayor?
Good evening, Ms. Gray. Thank you for bringing the issue up before the council. As you know, the world is suffering a huge humanitarian crisis with regard to the movement of people for various reasons, to escape poverty, to escape persecution, hunger, fights over between territories by groups who have differences in ethnicity or whatever. But the mayor and council is very mindful that, you know, these migrant folks who come here desperate and are in need of assistance. And we are very concerned about the fact that the federal government's plan is hard to find because the migrants have come through the southern border, and then somehow tens of thousands of migrants are shipped to New York City, which is ill-equipped to handle it. Mayor Adams is, I envy the man. I don't envy him for the task, but I admire him in a way for the fact that he's trying to resolve the problem. And one of the ways he tried to solve the problem is he's been sending groups of busloads of migrants to other communities up in Rockland and Orange County, for instance. And we are mindful that such a thing could happen in the borough, that somehow migrants, someone may find a desire that, you know, migrants should come this way in New Jersey, South Bergen. And so we have already been planning for such an event.
Oh, hold on. I'd like to speak. I'm the one who brought this up to the county. I'm the one who brought this up to the state. I'm the one who brought this up to everybody. We are ill-equipped for this. It would overwhelm the town and our social resources. So yes, we are on top of this. We've had meetings. We don't know what's going on in the federal government. We are not equipped to handle this. That's where we're at. So we've been doing our due diligence as best we can to find out whatever we can find out. But no, this is a humanitarian crisis at the highest level, and the way this is being handled is not in the best interest of these migrants, but Rutherford is zero equipped to handle this.
Mayor, can I add something, please?
Please
just to assure the public, we've heard the rumors, but there has been no credible evidence that migrants or any asylum seekers are coming to Rutherford anytime soon. To the mayor's point, because of the rumors, we have met, had discussions, we've inquired with various other governmental agencies. No one has said that migrants are on their way, but you know, we're just preparing in the event, or meeting, I should say, in the event it does happen. But there's no credible evidence right now that Rutherford is a destination anytime in the near future or in the long term.
If I could just echo the mayor's comments, he has attacked this rumor head-on and has contacted every agency imaginable in a commendable way to prepare and advise the powers to be that this would be a hardship to any immigrants that came close to this town, because the services would not be able to be afforded to them in terms of fire, health, ambulance, police, schooling. And the mayor really should be commended for what he has done to contact the state police, the Trenton County, federal government, in multiple meetings that we've all attended, in his concern to make sure that the residents here are not affected and the migrants are not jeopardized being placed in an area that is not feasible or serviceable.
The only last thing I'll add to this is the irony of the information I received is the most important thing most of these people are going to need is a dentist. Because as they're crossing, coming up through the jungles, their teeth are getting stolen because of the gold. So we are totally, there's nothing, we are the only community in southern Bergen County with a social service department, and we're regional. So we have to handle what we have now. So we just can't. So I can't control what somebody does up the food chain, but I can assure you that we're ill-equipped, but we're doing the best we can to prepare. And we've had several meetings. That's pretty much as much as I can say to that. Anybody else from the council? Councilman?
Hi. I'll work backwards from Ms. Gray on up because I'll just go in reverse order since it's topical. I feel like I need to clarify a few important things about this humanitarian crisis and about what's happening in New York City and about what information we know and what we don't know. It is absolutely true that a rumor, I can't stress enough, a piece of information came from one person to the borough implying that we may be receiving migrants. How that typically works is that New York City is fully responsible to provide funding, and in fact sits on hundreds of millions of dollars to fund these migrants being lodged, cared for, and fed. Because we have no real information that they're coming, it's impossible to acquire real information that those resources will be provided. How I feel about it, and I'm only speaking on behalf of myself as a human, a person, and a councilwoman, is this is mass chaos. There are too many people for any community to manage, including the big bad New York City, and that's why they're being sent elsewhere. So we are putting human beings on buses and shipping them to places that don't want them. That is the humanitarian crisis we're talking about. We're talking about human beings fleeing war, coming here. Not here to Rutherford, here to the United States. So yes, I have been given the privilege of being in meetings talking about the what if, but I cannot stress enough to the community, it is a big what if. Our attorneys can share with you, there have been dozens and dozens and dozens of lawsuits filed by communities saying they can't handle the influx of migrants. I suspect, the attorney in me suspects, that that is going to change and pivot the way that the New York City does business. There have been no migrants sent interstate, meaning all over the New York borders. At best, they've gone north of the city. So I feel like we need to just take a deep breath and understand that, yes, if someone is sent here, our county has been notified, the state has been notified, and we as a governing body will be responsible to make sure that we could care for these people. But while there is a humanitarian crisis, there is no crisis currently in Rutherford or even close to it. Journalists are required to get 3 confirmed on-the-record sources before they act on any information. We have 1 non-recorded source, just to know where this has come from. No one else can confirm for us that this is happening at any level of the government. No one. So I just want to be really clear about sort of what I'm worried is becoming a panic over information we cannot acquire, and not for lack of effort. Mr. Bruno's exactly right. Our mayor has addressed this over and over for days and days and days, and the answer is the same. So that means everyone in every government is really good at hiding it, which I suspect, considering the rumor mill in just Rutherford, that's not the case, or there's no credible evidence that it's happening. So you can honestly believe that if there is any indication that we are receiving migrants to Rutherford, we will make sure that we acquire the support that we need to, if we can. Going back to Ms. DiTomaso. Ms. DiTomaso, I was unaware that Teterboro was supposed to stop after 11 p.m. I was also, I haven't seen evidence of the oil in pools or the soot on houses. As the green team liaison, I think we have some work to do. I am a relentless questioner for information, so perhaps you and I should meet separately with the green team if they wish to see what we can do. I'm happy to take on that laboring oar in my capacity as a liaison for the green team. Like Mr. Coakley said, absolutely addressing this on a higher governmental level may be appropriate, but I think you and I should come up with some sort of strategic plan with the green team to address the environmental issues. And I don't know the cost of an environmental study, but maybe we can acquire some grants or otherwise to figure that out. Mr. Wilson, I think my colleagues addressed many of your questions, but I just wanted to speak to parking in general. I'm really fascinated by parking in Rutherford because I've heard the word parking crisis, and then I've asked for some data about parking, and in fact, a lot of our public lots are not fully utilized. So I want to really understand what that really looks like for the borough and whether or not we should be adjusting how we think about parking, both for the community, but for those that visit the community. So I think that's something that's sort of in my ticker personally to try to figure out where we stand with that. Mr. Lubruno, I just want to address the liquidated damages issue. I'm a frequent drafter of liquidated damages provisions because they're in many, many, many contracts. And for any non-lawyers in the room, it's sort of like the slap on the hand penalty when it's like an extra penalty. If you break a contract, you of course have a claim for a breach of contract, but then the liquidated damage provision is like that extra kicker that sort of incentivizes people to do what they say they're going to do. That's sort of the best you've got in a contract is a liquidated damages provision to get you that little extra bit. $1 million is $1 million. Yes, could the developer choose to pay it, but that's our opportunity to disincentivize them from not doing what they say they're going to do. Finally, Mr. Doyle, I really appreciate you raising the PTSD awareness issue. I admittedly do not have a really good understanding about how affordable housing is allocated between which groups that need it. So now I have another thing that I guess I need to learn, which is fine. I'm happy to talk to you about that further and see what research I can do and how we can work together to maybe work with our developers, both present and future, to make sure that that community is housed or at least considered as that housing is allocated. That's it.
Thank you. Anybody else from the council?
I think most of the questions have been answered by my colleagues. I just want to actually thank Mr. Lubruno and Mr. Wilson for their incisive questions about the redevelopment agreement and the pilot. I think they're really important things that we need to think about so we know we have a thorough understanding of what we are voting on today. Specifically, I would like to potentially ask our professionals to address one of the questions that Mr. Wilson asked, which is about the projected number of children in affordable housing units over time. I am skeptical as a West Ender who lives on Clark Avenue and lives in a community with a ton of families who live in apartment buildings with a couple of bedrooms and have 1 child, 2 children, 3 children. It is a little bit economically biased to think that because there is a 2-bedroom apartment, a 3-bedroom apartment, that there won't be children there, or there will only be 1 child for 3 of those apartments. I'm skeptical about it. So it's something that I would love to know the basis. I know that there's a study cited here, but I'd love to know more about the basis of that estimate and what it's founded on, if that's possible. If it's not possible now, then I'll find that later.
So the Rucker study is often cited, and you know, at face value, it seems low, that that's the number of children that's going to be generated in the twos and threes. But as a matter of public policy, the threes are needed to meet the fair share housing. It's state policy for this planning area to have that number of 3 bedrooms. So new construction, 15%. Of the 15%, a certain portion has to be 3-bedroom, and there's an income mix for that. So that's where the 3 bedrooms come. Most projects, we see that the developers really aren't keen on building the 3-bedroom in the unit, but that's part of the larger state policy to integrate affordable housing and to give affordable housing choices for families.
Thank you. Thank you for that. But my question was more to the issue of how many children are estimated to live in the 3-bedroom apartment. It said
Right, so that.
3 children in three bedrooms.
Right, so then, that Rutgers study that had since been updated is, for better or worse, what most mayor and councils and planning boards and zoning boards do their financial due diligence on. As NW has done it, as the developers, and also the Borough of Rutherford Council, we rely on that. And so far, the data has been proven out. In some instances, what I find is that you have your initial population, and then there'll be a slightly higher student population, but that's because the people that had made families, that didn't start with families, are still there, and then they eventually either stay in town and buy a single-family home, and it serves as the seed bed for that, which is I see a lot of in similar projects. But I don't have a study to back that up. It's just doing this every night, 3 nights a week. But that Rutgers study is basically what the Blaustein School has generated in contacting the 560-plus school districts that New Jersey has. So it's based on real data.
Okay, thank you very much.
Council President, I'll go next. Okay, I'm not going to repeat my colleagues. I just want to thank the Pride Alliance for coming. They left already, but I want to thank them for coming and thanking us. We thank them for being so amazing. The festival was incredible, and you're welcome. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to move on to, we're going to move Resolution 144. Council President?
Thank you, Mayor. This evening, I'm moving Resolution Number 144, designating Native Development Urban Renewal LLC as a redeveloper of Block 147, Lot 1, and Block 145, Lot 10.01 on the borough's tax map, commonly known respectfully as 15 Sylvan Way. Motion.
Motion by Council President. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Coakley. Any questions or comments by the council? Seeing none, may I have a roll call?
Councilman Coakley?
Yes.
Councilman McGowan?
Yes.
Councilman Big Roberson?
Yes.
Councilman Guzman?
Yes.
Councilman Del Rey Cohen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Quattrone?
Yes.
Thank you. Council President?
Thank you, Mayor. Next, we are going to do an ordinance on first read. We will be moving the adoption, further amending to the Theater District Redevelopment Plan Area A, Sylvan Walkway. Missy, can you please read the ordinance by title only?
An ordinance adopting further amendments to the Theater District Redevelopment Plan, Area A, Sylvan Walkway, Springdale, Glen Road, Orient Way, and Ettrick Terrace parking area for the Theater District Redevelopment Area.
Thank you. I make a motion to move that the ordinance be passed on first reading and advertised according to law.
I have a motion by the Council President. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Guzman. Any questions or comments by the council? Seeing none, may I have a roll call?
Councilman Coakley?
Yes.
Councilwoman McGowan?
Yes.
Councilwoman Begg Roberson?
Yeah.
Councilman Guzman?
Yes.
Councilwoman Del Rey-Cohen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Quattro?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Next, we're going to do an ordinance that's on second reading. This is the approving the application and execution of a financial agreement with Native Development. Missy, can you please read the ordinance by title only?
An ordinance of the Borough of Rutherford, County of Bergen, State of New Jersey, approving the application of an execution of the financial agreement with Native Development Urban Renewal LLC in connection with the redevelopment of 15 Sylvan and 5 Ettrick Terrace.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to move that the ordinance be passed on second reading and advertised according to law.
I have a motion by the council president. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Coakley. I'm now going to open it up to the public for any comments on this subject and the subject matter only. Anyone wishing to speak, please step forward to the microphone. Either state your name and address, or please sign the book.
David Labruno, 423 Stuyvesant. Yes, it was mentioned that we have some number of children will be in these units. The state law contemplates that we have this 4-to-1 ratio of units to affordable housing that would compensate the developer for building the affordable housing units. So then the numbers that we go on are beyond the tax abatement is for something else. There's no requirement about a tax abatement, right? So if we go into the numbers then that were also offered up earlier, you know, I guess in the estimates there, it also talks about what the rents would be for particular units. I was wondering if there was a comparison to other local projects. For example, we have a number that's pretty low for a studio apartment, which says $1,695, when a studio apartment in the Parker goes for $2,100 and has got $500 increase for the upcoming rents. So that's up to 26, 27. So all these numbers then go into the projections that are estimated by our gentlemen on behalf of us, which seem to be, you know, a little problematic in that aspect. If we then go to talk about the abatement and getting the 10 and 11%, I will note that the applicant, when he first submitted his application, and the one that's on file, the one proposed by the mayor, offered 10% over the course of the lifetime, yes. But the 10% over the course of the lifetime, also the state law requires phases, as you said. The maximum that is statutorily permitted for the first 15 years is 10%, right? 10% is the statutorily maximum that's permitted in an agreement, in a pilot. That's what we've given. That's what the applicant asked for. The next 6 years, the statutory maximum that can be given is 10% or 20% of the taxes. I'm happy to be corrected if that's the case. That's how I read it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'd love to be corrected. Because then the next 6 years, we give out 11% or 20% of the taxes that would be due. I'm also interested, since we didn't receive this information beforehand, about what the assessed value of the project would be, such that we came to these numbers. I know we talked about a $30 million project. The property is assessed at $2 million now, which I guess the taxes are represented to be around 80. If I'm wrong, maybe someone correct me, but I think when the applicant acquired the property, the tax assessment then was cut to a significant amount that had been higher. And is it not true that the state law, you can't give out a tax abatement that would be of the initial payment on the pilot can't be less than that which is currently paid? So it'd be interested to know if there was a reduction in the assessment once the applicant acquired it, because if it was $4.4 million and it's assessed at $2 now, then you get close to $200,000 a year that we start off with. So again, all of these things go into the numbers that you presented us just here tonight for everyone to look at, and many of them seem problematic. As I said, by my look of the application, the pilot application that initially came in, the applicant requested something. He's gotten exactly that. Yes, we did negotiate and got 11% for the final 15 years. But it's 11% or the phased-in tax amount. And so by my look on these numbers, 11% on year 15 is still going to be, I don't know, I'm not sure how impactful
You're
it would-
coming up on your time.
Sure. That's 4 minutes.
I know, we timed you.
Yeah, I got one. So all of these things go into the numbers. It would be helpful if we could have these things beforehand so we can make more sense of them. That's trying to do it on the fly. But I'm only a guy here with my fingers and a piece of paper working numbers and trying to figure out what it would be. And, again.
Thank you, you're at your time.
It's 4:29.
I have you at 4:57 and
All
I have
right, well,
8:01.
we're going to have to get a better clock. Thanks.
One of us does, yes. Anybody else from the public wishing to speak on this subject and this subject matter only? Thank you. Anyone from the council wishing to comment? Seeing none? Council President?
Councilman Coakley?
Yes.
Councilwoman McGowan?
Yes.
Councilwoman Big Roberson?
Yes.
Councilman Guzman?
Yes.
Councilman Delray Cone?
Yes.
Councilwoman Quattrone?
Yes.
Council President?
Thank you. First, I'd like to approve the regular meeting minutes of May 22nd, 2023. Councilman Guzman and Councilwoman Quattrone were absent. Motion.
Motion by Council President, may I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Delray Cone. Any questions or comments by the council? Seeing none, may I have a roll call?
Councilman Coakley?
Yes.
Councilwoman McGowan?
Yes.
Councilman Big Roberson?
Yes.
Councilman Guzman?
Abstain.
Councilwoman Delray Cone?
Yes.
Councilwoman Quattrone?
Abstain.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to approve the closed session meeting minutes of May 22nd, 2023. Councilman Guzman and Councilwoman Quattrone were absent. Motion.
Motion by Council President, may I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Delray Cone, actually. Any questions or comments by the council? Seeing none, may I have a roll call?
Councilman Coakley?
Yes.
Councilwoman McGowan?
Yes.
Councilman Big Roberson?
Yes.
Councilman Guzman?
Abstain.
Councilman Delray Cone?
Yes.
Councilwoman Quattrone?
Abstain.
Next, I'd like to move resolution number 141 to award of contract for Borough Buildings phone system to Johnston Communications in the amount of $44,019.95. Motion.
Motion by Council President, may I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Guzman. Any questions or comments by the council? Seeing none, may I have a roll call?
Councilman Coakley?
Yes.
Councilman McGowan?
Yes.
Councilman Big Roberson?
Yes.
Councilman Guzman?
Yes.
Councilman Delray Cone?
Yes.
Councilwoman Quattrone?
Yes.
Next, I'd like to move resolution number 140, award of contract for installation of Cat 6 cabling Borough Hall and Health Department to Millennium Communications Group in the amount of $94,306.67. Motion.
Motion by Council President, may I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Guzman. Any questions or comments by the council? Seeing none, may I have a roll call?
Councilman Coakley?
Yes.
Councilman McGowan?
Yes.
Councilman Big Roberson?
Yes.
Councilman Guzman?
Yes.
Councilwoman Delray Cone?
Yes.
Councilwoman Quattrone?
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Next, I'd like to move the consent agenda. All items are considered a routine by nature, and consent by the council will be enacted by one motion. Motion.
Motion by Council President, may I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Delray Cone. Any questions or comments by the council? Seeing none, may I have a roll call?
Councilman Coakley?
Yes.
Councilwoman McGowan?
Yes.
Councilman Big Roberson?
Yes.
Councilman Guzman?
Yes.
Councilwoman Delray Cone?
Yes.
Councilwoman Quattrone?
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move on to my liaison and committee assignment for finance. I'd like to move resolution number 135, authorizing the execution of an agreement with the county to supersede the cooperative agreement of July 1, 2021, and amendments establishing the county community development program. Motion.
Motion by Council President, may I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Quattrone. Any questions or comments by the council? Seeing none, may I have a roll call?
Councilman Coakley?
Yes.
Councilwoman McGowan?
Yes.
Councilman Big Roberson?
Yes?
Councilman Guzman?
Yes.
Councilman Delroy Cohen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Quattrone?
Yes.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to move resolution number 136, authorizing inclusion in the Bergen County Community Development Program. Motion.
Motion by Council President, may I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Guzman. Any questions or comments by the council? Seeing none, may I have a roll call?
Councilman Coakley?
Yes.
Councilwoman
Yes.
McGowan? Councilwoman Big Roberson?
Yes?
Councilman Guzman?
Yes.
Councilwoman Delroy Cohen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Quattrone?
Yes.
Thank you. Next is resolution number 143, approval of items to revenue and appropriation, Clean Communities Grant in the amount of $36,327.62. Motion.
Motion by Council President, may I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Quattrone. Any questions or comments by the council? Seeing none, may I have a roll call?
Councilman Coakley?
Yes.
Councilwoman McGowan? Councilwoman Big Roberson?
Yes?
Councilman Guzman?
Yes.
Councilwoman Delroy Cohen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Quattrone?
Yes.
Thank you. Next is resolution number 130, authorizing submission of grant agreement to participate in the NJ Department of Community Affairs lead grant assistance program. Motion.
Motion by Council President, may I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Guzman. Any questions or comments by the council? Seeing none, may I have a roll call?
Councilman Coakley?
Yes.
Councilwoman McGowan?
Yes.
Councilman Big Roberson?
Yes?
Councilman Guzman?
Yes.
Councilwoman Delroy Cohen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Quattrone?
Yes.
Next, Mayor, I'd like to move resolution number 139, approval to submit a grant application and execute a grant contract with the New Jersey Department of Transportation for fiscal year '24 municipal aid program. Motion.
Motion by Council President, may I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Delroy Cohen. Any questions or comments by the council? Seeing none, may I have a roll call?
Councilman Coakley?
Yes.
Councilwoman McGowan?
Yes.
Councilman Big Roberson?
Yes?
Councilman Guzman?
Yes.
Councilwoman Delroy Cohen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Quattrone?
Yes.
Lastly, I'd like to move resolution 146, authorizing the borough to participate in the Union County Cooperative Pricing Agreement. Motion.
Motion by Council President, may I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Guzman. Any questions or comments by the council? Seeing none, may I have a roll call?
Councilman Coakley?
Yes.
Councilwoman McGowan?
Yes.
Councilman Big Roberson?
Yes?
Councilman Guzman?
Yes.
Councilwoman Delroy Cohen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Quattrone?
Yes.
Mayor, I think I have said enough tonight. I would just like to thank the borough administrator again for his work in getting the ramp to his building accomplished. I'm so excited about that, as are the members of the Access for All Committee, so thank you, sir. And the planning board meets this Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you. And when we finish the road to nowhere, you could be the first one to walk to the door. Councilman Guzman.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I do not have much to report on my assignments. However, I would like to acknowledge two police officer candidates that are here that have been waiting for their time to get through all this tonight. I'd just like to acknowledge Mr. Patrick O'Keefe and Mr. Dylan Coy for being here tonight, and looking forward to seeing great things from you guys. That's all I got. Thank you.
You see how Brian's face is right now? He's just like so mad he's got to sit here. All right, thank you. Public Works.
Thank you, Mayor. For Public Works, I'd like to move to accept the resignation of Jason Wagner effective July 10th, 2023. And I would just like to thank Mr. Wagner for his decades of service to the DPW.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
And just something to, motion. Yeah. You're welcome. Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Guzman or Council President? All right, whatever.
Councilman Coakley?
Yes.
Councilwoman McGowan?
Yes.
Councilman Big Roberson?
Yes?
Councilman Guzman?
Yes.
Councilwoman Delroy Cohen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Quattrone?
Yes.
Thank you.
And the only other thing I have, Mayor, is as many of you probably know, June 19th is Juneteenth. It is a federal holiday. Borough Hall will be closed. Our schools will be opened. I just wanted to encourage as many residents as possible to join me at Mount Ararat Church at 6:30 on June 19th. Pastor Pate is hosting a non-denominational program in celebration of Juneteenth. He's worked really hard to put together a panel discussion, and some artists are also going to be there. I will be there as well, saying a few words. So I really encourage you to acknowledge this holiday with the breadth of importance that it deserves, and to join me at Mount Ararat on June 19th if your schedule allows. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Fire.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to make a motion to move resolution number 145, authorizing the installation of a new fire hydrant on Borough Street. Motion?
Motion by Councilman Coakley. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Quattrone. Any questions or comments by the council? Seeing none, may I have a roll call?
Councilman Coakley?
Yes.
Councilman McGowan?
Yes.
Councilman Big Robertson?
Yes?
Councilman Guzman?
Yep.
Councilwoman Del Rey Cohen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Quattrone?
Yes.
This heat's just getting everybody.
Thank you. Just in closing, I want to echo my colleagues' sentiments about the Rutherford Pride Alliance. Thank you, and you're welcome as well. We appreciate being a part of this, and let's continue the pride and the joyous celebration for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Quattrone.
I have nothing on my assignment tonight.
Thank you. Councilwoman Robertson.
Thank you. So I have a resolution 142 awarding a bid for the 2023 event planner to Cliffhanger Production in the amount of $38,150. Motion.
Motion by Councilwoman Robertson. May I have a second? Second by Council President. Any questions or comments by the council? Sweating none. May I have a roll call?
Councilman Coakley?
Yes.
Councilwoman McGowan?
Yes.
Councilman Big Robertson?
Yes.
Councilman Guzman?
Yes.
Councilwoman Del Rey Cohen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Quattrone?
Yes.
Anything else?
Yes, I do. And I know you guys are hot, but I want to. So this week, I am going to be meeting with the family of former and the deceased Councilman Alonzo Cisco Jr., who was our first black council member in Rutherford, New Jersey. And sadly, when you look up the first black council person in Rutherford, Reverend Ray Frazier comes up as the first black councilman. So his family is really wanting to think about his legacy. He died young. I believe he died at the age of 49. And he made such an impact on the borough. He was very connected to our police department. So, and we also want to make sure we have the right history on the books. So I'll be meeting with them this week, and I'll be working with our mayor to think about how we can honor this incredible human that did something special during a hard time. And that's it for me, Mayor. Thank you.
I think I have a couple appointments. So, first, I'd like to ask for council consent for the appointment of Dylan Coy, conditional appointment in accordance with the rules and regulations of the State of New Jersey Civil Service Commission, effective July 3rd, 2023. I'd ask for council consent.
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Guzman. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Council President. Any questions or comments by the council? Seeing none, may I have a roll call?
Councilman Coakley?
Yes.
Councilwoman McGowan?
Yes.
Councilwoman Big Robertson? Oh. Councilman Guzman?
Yes.
Councilman Del Rey Cohen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Quattrone?
Yes.
Thank you. Next. All right, we're good. That's okay. We're going to move on. Patrick O'Keefe, your father has to stand before I start, or I'm not doing it. I'll wait, Brian. I'd like to appoint Patrick O'Keefe, conditional appointment in accordance with the rules and regulations, State of New Jersey Civil Service Commission, effective July 3rd, 2023. I'd ask for council consent.
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Guzman. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Council President. Any questions or comments by the council? Seeing none, may I have a roll call?
Councilman Coakley?
Yes.
Councilwoman McGowan?
Yes.
Councilman Big Roberson? Councilman Guzman?
Yes.
Councilwoman Delroy Cohn?
Yes.
Councilwoman Quattrone?
Yes.
All right, now you guys can leave because we have more work to do and you're not obligated to stay here. Ordinances on first read. Councilman Guzman. By citizen O'Keefe.
Ready, Mayor? First up, we have like motion establishing a four-way, sorry, didn't mean the motion yet. Establishing a four-way stop sign at Montrose and Morse Avenues. Missy, can you please read the ordinance by title only?
An ordinance to amend and revise Chapter 126, Vehicles and Traffic of the Borough Code of the Borough of Rutherford.
Motion by
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Guzman. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Coakley. Any questions or comments by the council?
Can I just make a quick comment, Mayor? It seems silly to make a comment on a four-way stop sign, but I just wanted to give some credit to a resident that pursued this pretty endlessly. Mike Canallen and his wife, they sort of observed what they thought were dangerous conditions on their corner and raised it, raised it with passion. And as soon as Chief Russo was made aware, he very quickly checked the situation again, did another traffic assessment, and quickly put this on our agenda. So I just wanted to thank the team at the police department as well as Mr. Canallen and his family.
Council President.
Just for, to be in the record, Councilman Guzman is moving that an ordinance be passed on first reading and advertised according to law.
I got you. Motion. I'm sorry. Vote, I'm sorry. Council President.
Councilman Coakley?
Yes.
Councilwoman McGowan?
Yes.
Councilman Big Roberson? Councilman Guzman?
Yes.
Councilman Delroy Cohn?
Yes.
Councilwoman Quattrone?
Yes.
Next up on ordinance on first read, next one is to create a handicap space in the vicinity of 119 Darwin Avenue. Missy, can you please read the ordinance by title only?
An ordinance to amend and revise Chapter 126, Vehicles and Traffic of the Borough Code of the Borough of Rutherford.
I'd like the motion to move the ordinance be passed on first reading and advertised according to law.
Motion by Councilman Guzman. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Council President. Any questions or comments by the council? Seeing none?
Councilman Coakley?
Yes.
Councilwoman McGowan?
Yes.
Councilman Big Roberson? Councilman Guzman?
Yes.
Councilman Delroy Cohn?
Yes.
Councilwoman Quattrone?
Yes.
Second reading, Councilman Guzman.
Thank you very much, Mayor. First up is amending a designation of no parking restrictions in certain areas. Missy, can you please read the ordinance by title only?
An ordinance to amend and revise Chapter 126, Vehicles and Traffic of the Borough Code of the Borough of Rutherford.
Motion to move the ordinance be passed on second reading and advertised according to law.
Motion by Councilman Guzman. May I have a second? Second by Council President. At this time, I'm going to open this up to the public for this subject and this subject matter only. If anybody from the public wishes to speak, please step up to the microphone. Seeing none, I'm going to close it to the public and open it for the council comment. Seeing none, may I have a roll call?
Councilman Coakley?
Yes.
Councilwoman McGowan?
Yes.
Councilman Guzman?
Yes.
Councilman Delroy Cohn?
Yes.
Councilwoman Quattrone.
Yes.
Mayor, under second reading this evening is the alcoholic beverages and theater district regulations. Missy, can you please read the ordinance by title only?
An ordinance to amend and revise Chapter 7 entitled Alcoholic Beverages of the Borough Code of the Borough of Rutherford.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to move that the ordinance be passed on second reading and advertised according to law.
Motion by Council President. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Coakley. I'll now open this up for any public comment. Anyone wishing to speak, please step up on the microphone. Seeing none, I'm going to close to the public and open up for any council comment. Seeing none, let's have a roll call.
Councilman Coakley?
Yes.
Councilwoman McGowan?
Yes.
Councilman Guzman?
Yes.
Councilwoman Del Ricon?
Yes.
Councilwoman Quattrone.
Yes.
Motion? Yes, ma'am, I am.
Motion.
Motion by Council President. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.